Hey y'all! Welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to share with you a subscriber request. The subscriber recently found out that she is a deep dark winter and she is wanting to learn how to experiment with some new makeup looks. When we were chatting back and forth on Instagram, we talked about two looks that she really liked. One was like Lana Del Rey, and then two was kind of the Selena Gomez vibe from her Single Soon music video, which after she said that one, I went and watched the video. I really love that kind of direction for the purple lavender hues and the just rounded contoured eye shape. We're gonna kind of put all that together and create a makeup look. Let's get right into the video. I want to start off with my base. To prime my skin, I'm gonna use the Smashbox Primerizer. I love this because it is that nice kind of in the middle as far as functionality between a primer and a moisturizer. And I find it doesn't matter what type of foundation I'm applying, it always works. New to me foundation is the Haus Lab Triclone Skin Tech Foundation, and I purchased shade 015 Fair Warm. Now, if you're like me and you find that very puzzling, fair, warm, because I'm very pink. I have a lot of pink in my facial skin as well as my neck and my body skin. I was puzzled with this foundation because I wasn't sure how the shade range worked. And then I saw, I believe her name is Sarah Tano, Lady Gaga's makeup artist and the makeup artist kind of behind the range. She said that warm is going to be more pink. So then that kind of flipped a switch in my mind that the Haus Lab's color range is going to be similar to the color range of MAC Cosmetics, which is going to be backwards compared to everywhere else. So like say for instance in Estee Lauder or Lancome, you wear a cool undertone. Haus Labs or MAC, you would be a warm undertone. So just flip that and that makes things make a lot more sense. The shade 15W looks extremely light. If I'm not mistaken, this is either the second or third lightest shade in the range, with the lightest shade being 000, which is pure white. What intrigued me with this foundation is you only need a small amount, and this shade, when you spread it out and thin it out, it matches my body skin. My face is a lot more ruddy because I have rosacea and the skin on our face just tends to be thinner. So when I look for makeup, but I find especially in the warmer seasons when, you know, maybe shoulders, arms, maybe neckline is a little bit lower. If I match my face, then my face and neck feels a lot darker than my body. And I know there's always going to be discrepancies within the color because no one is going to be one consistent color from our head to our toe. I like to work with a foundation that's going to help unify. And this formula has such a beautiful thin consistency to where you can really thin it out all over the face in a nice thin layer and then bring it a little bit onto my neck. My face and neck now blend in with the rest of the body, which is such a wonderful feat because my face and neck, I've always joked, they live in a different zip code or postal code than the rest of my body as far as color goes. Now, for some reason with this foundation, I have found I feel really apprehensive with using it too much. I can't even call this a quarter of a pump. Tiny little bit. Just really focus on thinning it out. Because with this shade, you can see against my facial skin, this looks very muted, cool toned, and too light. If I go really opaque with this, it's going to throw off the harmony that it otherwise creates when I apply it more sheerly. I want to use a tiny amount of product and then take my time to really spread and thin it out because I can always go through and build up. This is my first time really kind of putting it to the test. First of all, tried it on the back of my hand, then I did a little bit of swatching, and then I did a quick all over the face application before I took my evening shower just to see how things would look. This is a really lovely formula. I would be interested to see how this wears throughout the day because I have not put this through a proper wear test. But the application is very fascinating because it's very flexible, and the flexibility means that you can really build it up or shear it out and it doesn't feel heavy on the skin. Like right now it feels very lightweight and very weightless. Something I really appreciate about this foundation formula is that it reminds me, as far as texture, it reminds me of my favorite foundation, which is the #1 de Chanel Revitalizing Camellia Foundation. In that formula I wear shade BR12, which I've spoke about many times on my channel. This is very, very similar as far as the consistency, but it doesn't have that same slippery skincare feeling because the #1 Chanel foundation is very much a skincare infused foundation. So it has a little bit more of that skincare like emolliency on the skin, which gives it a little bit more slip. Here's one thin layer all over the skin. I'm in a closer range with my body skin. Now, if we look at comparison as far as the undertone, my facial skin has a lot of that ruddiness to it. It makes my foundation look more pinky, which now it makes my body skin look more yellow, especially in comparison with this more periwinkle blue purple. That's something to keep in mind as far as your color temperature. Everything is relative. If you have two cool tone shades next to each other, but one has a little bit more pink and one is just slightly more yellow, it can look more warm or more cool tone. So always remember, color temperature is relative to the surrounding area. And to make things even more complicated, I'm gonna warm it up a little bit more so that way now it's in line with my body skin, which feels more yellow. So I'm going to use the WESTMAN Atelier Face Trace Stick in Biscuit. I like to work off the back of my hand, and I'm going to use my foundation brush, which was the BK Beauty number 106 round foundation brush. And with my look today, it's going to be a little bit more of a kind of statement look, which you would have seen in the intro of the video. I want to keep any type of contour or shaping with my makeup fairly minimal because I want the eyes to be the central focus of the look. I might come back later and add a little bit more, but for now I just want to keep a very thin wash and I want to move into highlight. And with this look being a inspiration from the Selena Gomez Single Soon video, I want to use at least one Rare Beauty product. So I'm going to use the Rare Beauty Liquid Luminizer. This is the shade Enchant. You have this very generous doe foot applicator, but I'm going to take it on the back of my hand. This is a little bit more of a cool pinky tone when you compare it to the other shades in the range. My skin, it does pull a little more warm, but for this look, it's going to help. And also something I've really appreciated about slightly warmer highlighters for my skin tone is since I removed my facial hair, other things that were previously there but they never really stood out too much are more noticeable because now we have to look at things in relative comparison. Because before, my skin's quite fair and my facial hair was about a medium depth. That gave contrast, so you have light versus dark. Now that I don't have this there creating contrast, we have my hair which has been lightened, and then you have like my lip color and my eye color. These two relative to the rest of my face don't have a ton of contrast. So now if we look at my skin, little bits of hyperpigmentation, areas of increased redness appear more obvious. So I like to use something slightly warmer, especially here on the high points of my cheek where I have more hyperpigmentation from unprotected sun exposure over the years. I like to use that to help neutralize that base pigment. You can just see adding that liquid highlight, even though it's not necessarily adding coverage, it helps to take down that kind of cast appearance of the hyperpigmentation I have here on the high cheekbone. This is optional, but I'm going to use a little bit of a color corrector. The one I cannot get enough of is the Bobbi Brown Skin Correct Stick. I use the shade Light Bisque, and with a handheld mirror, I'm just going to go through, look for areas that have any high blue or purple tones showing through. I'm just going to go right under my eye, and I want to make sure that I'm neutralizing the darkness under my eyes because where the eye look is going to be more of a smoky purple based look. That can enhance any of this purple blue under my eyes. So to prevent my eyes from going too bruisey, I want to just take them extra second and conceal and just really perfect the under eye. Because once you get the eye makeup on, even after you color correct and conceal, some of that color will pop through because it's being enhanced by the color we're putting on the eyes. So just take an extra moment to really perfect that. When blending my color corrector, something I like to do is use my foundation brush and just bounce over. I like to roughly blend it, but I don't want to blend it all the way out because I still want it to work and correct what I'm trying to cover. So any of those blue, purple shadows showing through or gray cast on the skin, balance and spread it out, but I don't want to wipe it away. And then with that just kind of slightly being bounced into the skin, what I like to do is then use the point of a dry beauty sponge and press over. Since it's dry, I'm not going to worry about the moisture from the sponge thinning out the product. Instead, I've got a dry sponge which is going to pick up the superficial product sitting on top of the skin, which is going to help just smooth things out and look more realistic without going too heavy under the eyes. This is going way, way back to when I first began in makeup artistry and I was working for an Estee Lauder counter. I hadn't been to makeup school yet, so everything I knew came from what I learned in brand trainings, as well as what I've just learned from YouTube and reading books. And I remember I had one client who always complained that her foundation wasn't quite doing what she wanted it to, meaning she had some discoloration still showing through when she put the full face on, unless she used the Estee Lauder Double Wear Maximum Cover. And she used it here and there more so as a concealer, but she preferred Double Wear because Double Wear was much lighter in consistency and she preferred the color range that it has. I think at that point, the Estee Lauder Double Wear Maximum Cover, if it's even still around, it came in I think about 5 shades. It was a navy bottle with a little gold twist off lid, and the bottle was reminiscent of the Double Wear Light that we had around that time, and this would have been beginning of 2010. She was concerned with just regular Double Wear around her mouth and sometimes around the jawline. Things felt a little like there was a blue-purple shadow showing through. I didn't understand it. So she mentioned to me that she had PCOS, and that led to the growth of some facial hair. That's when I thought back to what could I do, and I remember from art class that if you want to neutralize an unwanted tone, you would color correct. So that's when I started using an orange lipstick from Estee Lauder, and I mixed that with the Double Wear concealer, and then I would apply that to the areas of shadowing and then apply Double Wear on top. And that became our little thing that I would show her how to mix it up, apply it, and then apply the foundation on top. So that's kind of what I'm doing now, is I want to spread things out to neutralize the unwanted color. Now the difference from what I'm doing is I've already applied foundation and I'm using this corrector on top. You could do it either way, and it's all personal preference. But when you're applying it on top, you want to make sure you do it before your traditional concealer and use a dry sponge. I'm using a dry Real Technique sponge, but if you have the little wedge sponges that you find at makeup counters, those are great. And that is what I would send her home with, a handful of those in her bag. And I'm like, if you need more, just stop by and I'll give you a few more. But that just helps take down the texture, especially for me as someone who shaves, or for her, she was shaving her face because of the facial hair growing. The dry sponge will help to press things and meld them with the texture, so that way you don't see like that stubbly texture over the face. So it's just little tips that can help someone out there if you find that happening. And that also works if you're someone who has raised healing acne marks, because sometimes as they heal, they scab over and you can get that unwanted texture. Just take a dry sponge, press gently over the areas with texture, and that will help to thin out the product just a bit. Huda Beauty Faux Filter Concealer, and I use shade 1.5B Yogurt Drops. Since I already have my foundation and concealer on, I'm just going to work off the back of my hand with a small brush. This is the Hourglass No. 3 All Over Shadow Brush. I want to brighten up right here in the very central portion of the tear trough, and then a little bit here on the outside corner of the eye. And I want to go ahead and start lifting from the lower lash line to the tail of the brow. This is going to start acting as a guide for me to shape the eyeshadow look later. Then I'm also going to go through and highlight a little bit with my concealer. Back to my foundation brush, and I'm going to go through and start blending out my concealer. I'm going to go back to that little brush that I used to apply my concealer, just to make sure the inner corner of the eye is blended out. And whatever little bit of product I have left, I'm just going to run over my eyelid to work as my eyeshadow primer. At this point, you should have such a small amount left on the back of your hand and in the bristles of the brush. It should be able to neutralize and prep your eyelid for your eyeshadow application without being so heavy that it causes a lot of creasing. And this is kind of how I prime my eyes on a day-to-day basis. Now I'm going to use my brush just to gently press over. This will also help to spread some of that product from the inner corner to the outer corner, so that way you're just getting a smoother blend. One more time, I'm just using my sponge and just gently press over any of the areas that I applied the concealer to. So now I'm happy with the coverage that I've got, but before I powder, I want to add a little bit of color to my skin. Tarte Maneater Blush and Go Cheek Plump in the shade Pink. I think it's Sephora's website. This is called Pink Pearl, but as far as I know, they're the same color. Every time I wear this liquid cheek color, I always get compliments from friends as well as people I don't know. They're just, "Ooh, what's on your cheeks? It's really, really pretty." And that's that's not something that happens very often. I've just really fallen in love with this product. So I take that little dot on the back of my hand and spread it out on the top of my cheekbones, and then I'll use my foundation brush to press and blend. And depending on how you use the product, you can either build it up or you can sheer it out. I tend to keep it high and sheer. This doesn't act like a backdrop for my blush. And this is also, I find, stays on quite well. So if your powder blush fades, you will have this giving you a little bit of vibrancy and vitality. Whatever's left, I'm gonna run right on the front of my cheek. Over the last several weeks, I found the way I apply makeup and think about creating a base has really changed. And I find I always use some type of liquid cheek color as I'm creating my base. And I almost treat it like part of the foundational makeup, that no matter what I apply on top, this is a necessary step. Logic behind that is we all have some type of little bit of rosiness or flush to the skin. And by adding that back in, when everything else wears away and you're kind of just left with your base makeup, you still have that little bit of color that's going to look more in harmony, and you're not going to have everything fade away to just like foundation face, which can feel very stark because you're one solid tone. And we normally blush right on the chin, on the nose, and a little bit on the forehead. So just whatever I have left on my brush, I run over those areas. And now we just kind of feel more harmonious and together. By Terry Hyaluronic Hydra-Powder. And something I've been enjoying is I've been using the Rephr 05 cheek brush, which I like for my powder blusher, but I also like using this to apply base layer of powder. So using a small fluffy brush like this, I can just go through, gently buff all over the skin. And then you normally will always have a little bit left in your lid. So what I like to do now is just pick up as much as I can on my brush. Now I'm gonna use it as a pressing motion and just bounce over my skin. It's a little backwards from how I normally do things, because normally I will stipple, then I'll buff over. This is just how I've been doing it. It's been working for me, and it's just to flow the moment. I have put together a Sydney Grace eyeshadow palette. Here are the colors inside of the palette. So we've got 8 eyeshadow colors, and it's a mix of pressed pigments as well as matte shadows. 5 mattes and 3 shimmers. And I'm gonna do my best to use all 8 shades, and the lightest matte shade called Heart and Soul, and it's a matte finish. Real Techniques RT308, and I want to use this color just to press all over my eyelid. I want this shadow to be your skin tone, but a fraction lighter or brighter and a little bit more pink. I want to create a little bit of a transitional effect. Matte eyeshadow in the shade Haven, Elf Fluffy Eye Blender. Since I'm using the Selena Gomez music video as a reference, from what I could see is it looked like the eye shape was very rounded, and it was very structural in the crease. With my handheld mirror, I want to look straight ahead, keep my eyes open, use my brush, place it in my socket, tilt up slightly, and back and forth, going from the outer corner of my eye to the inner corner of my eye. Keeping that brush slightly tilted up, it's going to create our transitional tone. And since it has that pinky undertone that our previous shade did, you're just gonna get a smoother blend. I'm going to use another matte eyeshadow, this time in Puppy Love. A little bit smaller with my brush. This is the Rephr number 14 brush, and compared to the e.l.f. brush, quite a bit smaller than the e.l.f. brush, which is going to give me more control to shape and contour the shape of my eye. So this time, instead of tilting my brush up or down, I'm going to go straight in. So just keep it flat. I'm going to start here on the outer corner where I want the most depth, just little gentle circles, and start rounding the way in. If you have very large eyes and you want to make them look very round, you can round all the way in. I'm going to stop mine in line with the inner corner of the iris, or the colored part of my eye. As I work my way in, I'm going to stop about here, and that's going to leave this inner corner open and bright, which is just going to work better for my eye shape. But like I said, if you have bigger, more open eyes, you can take it all the way in to really round it out, and you should have enough real estate in the eye area with the open brightness here on the inner corner that if you take the shadow all the way in, it won't look kind of funny. Kind of like if you're someone who wears the halo eyeshadow shape, which is where you have dark on the outside, dark on the inside, but bright in the middle, and that works for you. This could be a very similar placement. For me, it just kind of makes my inner eye look closed up and tired. So I keep this front part open. I'm going to take a little bit more of that shadow and just further build up. Mix together Heart and Soul and Haven. I want to use that now just to go right on top of that darker crease shade and just kind of feather and blend it up. focus more on back and forth motions instead of buffing because I want to keep that purple shade apparent and let that brown shade just kind of focus a little bit more in towards the socket of the eye. The reference number 2, lightest shade in my palette. And this shade is our first pressed pigment, and this is called Mystery. It's like a white that shifts blue-purple, focusing on rounding the eye. Start here around the inner corner, and I just want to let my brush tip guide the rounded shape. And then I want to take it up to meet that deeper shade I applied, and then I can fill in that void I have. So you'll have like a little bit of a triangular shape, and I'm gonna use that light shade to fill in. Next, I want to go to my next deepest shimmer shade, and this is another pressed pigment from Sydney Grace in the shade Aim High. I would think of this shade as almost like a pink champagne. I'm gonna continue using that reference number 2 brush, pressing over the center of the eyelid, bringing it up to meet that deeper shade I applied in my socket, and then just bring it slightly over to meet the previous shimmer shade that we applied on the lid. And when you get to the intersection, I'm just going to gently tap over the intersection of the 2 shades to blend. And something I like to do, where the flat shading brush normally has more of a rounded or beveled tip, I can use that brush, point upwards, and follow the underside of that socket line that we created. This is almost like a reverse way of doing a subtle cut crease effect. So you can see here versus here, it's giving my eye this more large, rounded appearance. So I want to take a quick pause on my eyeshadow. I'm going to switch over to eyeliner. This is a Sephora Collection colorful crayon eyeliner in the shade number 13, Tiramisu. And instead of going straight in with the pencil, I'm going to take a small angled brush. This is the BK Beauty number 208, and I want to use this to pick up that eyeliner pencil, and then I'm going to work with the brush versus the pencil to keep things thin. So the first thing I'm going to do is look straight ahead to my mirror, and I'm going to let the angle of the brush follow my very last eyelash and follow that line upwards. And whatever I have left on my brush, I want to just start carefully tracing it in and focusing on adding this more so to the root of the eyelash. And then you can go up a little bit higher and pull in to create a little bit of a wing shape. Now for this part, don't focus on making this overly perfected because we are going to go back in and we're going to add some powder eyeshadow on top to soften and smoke it out. But for now, I just want to keep this nice and thin. So now you'll have it on here, and this kind of ties into, if you want to keep this look more simple, what you could do is just use your champagne color all over the lid, a little bit of your mid-tone color to define the socket, and then add this wing on it, and you would have another look. The subscriber and I who were talking and chatting kind of talked about, which was a Lana Del Rey look. So that's a very kind of nude, all over the lid shade with a little bit of sculpting in the socket with a kind of elongated wing eyeliner. For Lana though, I've noticed instead of taking her liner more up, it tends to go more out. For me though, I like a little bit of lift. Now that I have my little bit of a flick on the outer corner, I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. This is BK number 204, and I wanted to use my matte periwinkle color. This is called Regal, and I want to use Regal to line from my outer corner to meet the shimmer highlight on the inner corner. Now I want to use my darkest shade in the palette. This is a matte eyeshadow called Beyond, and this is a dark chocolate brown with a strong pink purple undertone to it. I'm going to use that tiny little angled liner brush again. And what I want to do now is where I've got the disconnect from my upper lash line to my lower lash line, I want to use that darker shade to marry together the lower and the upper lash line. And then I can use that small brush I just used on my lower lash line to blend that in together. And then I can continue with that small brush, perfecting the upper lash line, going right over the pencil. Once I have that on, I want to go back in with that purple eyeshadow and just go through and tie and clean up under that liquid we just created a little bit. Now we have our final shade, and it's the shade I'm most excited about. This is the Pressed Pigment from Sydney Grace in the shade Dear Reader, and this is part of the collaboration Sydney Grace did with Talia, and I want to use this to add some pizzazz and excitement to the lower lash line. And I want to use this color as like a catch light under my eye. So right under my pupil, I want to wiggle this back and forth. Now I'm going to use my little flat brush, the rougher number 14. No additional product on here. I just want to go right under and blend any of the brown eyeshadow from that we used earlier. This will help to just add a little bit of a grounding. Now I'm going to use a NYX Epic Wear liner pencil. This is the shade Frosted Lilac, and I want to use this on my lower waterline. All right, let's finish off the eyes. I'm going to give my lashes a curl with my Surratt Releve Lash Curler. And today I have a new mascara, and this is one I've been wanting to try out for years. This is the Glossier Lash Slick in the shade Brown. Oh, I love that. It's got a little rubber toothbrush, which reminds me of I believe it's the CoverGirl Clump Crusher mascara I really love. So I cannot wait to see how this does. Oh, it gets right down to the root, and I can build up pretty easily. That's pretty. It gives you a very subtle lash look, which I really, really like. I have another newer to me mascara. This was going to be my backup mascara to use when I ran out of my Clinique one. And this is one I purchased here at Omomo. And this is the Kiss Me Hero and Make Long and Curl Mascara Advanced Film. And this is in the shade number 52 Latte Pink Brown. This is beautiful, but it doesn't show up really on my upper lashes. So I've been using it as a lower lash mascara, and it's really pretty. They do come in other colors, so like black and brown, so I think those would be great to try in the future. But for now, I am really enjoying this rose brown shade as a lower lash mascara color. I'm going to use a little bit more of the Dear Reader shade to put right on the very center of my eyelid. I'm going to put a little bit more on the lower lash line as well. For eyebrows, I'm going to use my Benefit Fluff Up Brow Gel. I'm going to use my Anastasia Beverly Hills Brow Pen in soft brown just to add a few little strokes throughout the lower side of my brows. I have a little bit of the Tatcha Kisu lip mask on, so I'm just going to blot that off. And I'm going to use the Makeup Forever Aqua Lip Pencil in the shade 14C. Now I'm going to use the Bobbi Brown Luxe Lipstick in the shade 311 Pink Cloud. For cheeks, I have a new highlighter, also from Haus Labs. This is the Bio Radiant Gel Powder Highlighter in the shade Moonstone. So I'm going to use a Morphe M510 brush. Now I want to use a powder blusher in an expanding shade, and this one I'm so excited about. I have a new to me brand altogether. This is a Chinese beauty brand called Flower Nose Jewelry Powder Blush in the shade 01 Snow Goddess. Outside you have this really beautiful, I think it's called the Moonlight Mermaid or Midnight Mermaid, something mermaid collection, and you have this really cute mermaid print here. And then on the inside you have a really beautiful ombre blush with the mermaid on the moon. So I'm going to use my rougher number 5 brush, and I want to use this towards the front of my cheek as my expanding shade. Next, I have a new blush to me as well, and this is from the Dior reformulation and re-release of the Rouge Blush. I have the shade 277 Ose, and this is a really beautiful cool toned pink shade, and I'm going to use my rougher number 5 brush. Okay, now that we've got all the color on, I just want to add a little bit of shape to the face. I believe these are being phased out. This is the Sephora Collection Matte Perfection Powder Foundation. I have the shade 10 Fair Pink. It's a little too dark for me, so what I like to use is a subtle warmth product. Then another step I've been loving is the e.l.f. Halo Glow Powder in pink. And then I use a big fluffy eyeshadow brush. This is a BK Beauty number 201. And I just run that right under my eyes and over the brow bone. And what I found is I really enjoy pink powder for doing my final eyeshadow blend and just tying in this blank space between where my eyeshadow stops and my cheek colors start. And then I can even take a little bit here on the inner corner to do some brightening, clean up any type of nose shaping, and just use a little bit of this pinky powder anywhere I want to brighten. And then now our final step, I want to add a little bit of gloss. I did purchase one product from the Lawless Lavender collection. This is the Forget the Filler Lip Plumping Line Smoothing Gloss in the shade Lavender Sorbet. Alrighty, and there we go. Here is our final Selena Gomez Lana Del Rey cool lavender inspired makeup look based off of a subscriber request. I really enjoy how this look came out. This is a great look I feel like you can take for any cool toned seasonal color palette, any of your winter seasons or any of your summer seasons. So for me, I'm a light summer, and the subscriber who requested this is a deep dark winter. If you want to make this even more appropriate for a deep winter, have fun going a little bit more bold on the cheeks. Instead of a brown eyeliner, you can use a black to really add that contrast. Go all out, add a false lash if you want to, or add in a little bit more eyeliner, or even play up the lower lash line with some more smoky lower lash mascara. Just have fun, really working those deep smoky tones that you find in your deep dark winter palette. Similarly, if you are a soft muted summer, maybe you want to take these shades and go a little bit more of a smoky gray tone, maybe a little bit more mauve versus lavender. And for me, this is very much going to be like a light summer party ready makeup look. This is definitely putting us back into our Barbie era for fun party makeup. So I hope you enjoyed this. I had such a fun time creating this look. And if you have any type of looks you want to see, feel free, let me know in the comment section down below, or head over to Instagram where you can find me at Dooley at Instagram. That's always linked in my description box down below. So head over there, send me a DM. I love to catch up and chat with all of you and answer any questions that maybe I can't get to here on YouTube. Until the next time, I hope you're taking care of yourself wherever it is you are in the world, and I will see you later. Bye, y'all.